All right. We are back. Yes. Welcome back in. This is the Chief Zone podcast. I appreciate you guys downloading and listening to another episode of the Chief Zone. For all of you watching live on Facebook and YouTube, appreciate you guys. We are back. Hope you all had a great holiday weekend last week. I certainly did. Hope you guys enjoyed. Surprisingly, fairly decent weather last week in Kansas City. We're not used to that, especially with the heat wave, and the worst is yet to come, unfortunately. But very nice to have that kind of weekend, holiday week at least. Obviously, stepped away from the podcast and had a lot of fun enjoying the 4th of July. So hope you all did as well. For those of you who work on holidays, props to you guys. I say this every time when we got a big holiday coming up. Everyone wants to be off on a holiday. And yeah, I've been there before. It is not fun, to say the least. All right, let's get into it. A lot of things to get into here on this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. Today, on July the 10th, marks the 7-year anniversary of Brett Veach being the general manager for the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's look back and reflect on that a bit because, boy, Brett Veach has quite the resume. Honestly, a Hall of Fame resume already when you look at it. Patrick Mahomes has won his 7th ESPY award, could win 2 more by the end of tomorrow. Tyreek Hill, he has mentioned the Chiefs yet again. Oh, boy. Wait till you hear what he had to say. The governor of Missouri was in Kansas City recently trying to figure out what to do with the Chiefs and the Royals. I also want to talk about Netflix's Receiver that dropped today. Got a chance to watch that, all 8 episodes. Pretty good show. Definitely recommend it. Joe Burrow also in the news recently with a very interesting schedule suggestion. All of that and more here on this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. Once again, I appreciate all of you guys watching live on Facebook and YouTube. And I just forgot about this. I promised this before, so let's do it right now. Call into the show. We only do this for post-game live streams, but I want to do it for regular podcasts as well. So definitely call in, and if you guys want to chat it up, you can certainly do so. Let me know your thoughts on everything. I will have that pinned comment there. Yeah, it should be a pinned comment now. So if people join in a little later, I almost banned Michael Martinez. I do not want to do that. Yeah, there, it's pinned. So you guys should be able to see that and call in. I want to utilize the call-in for the podcast more. So hopefully we can hear more of you, not just me. Would love to hear more of you guys as well, rather than only post-game. We can definitely, my bad, Michael. I definitely don't want to do that. You didn't do anything wrong. But yeah, call into the show if you guys want to speak your mind, have any questions. You guys, and also if you guys are too shy to call in, hey, comment in the chat below. Let me know your thoughts. I'll be keeping an eye on that as well as we go on with the podcast. All right, let's get into it. Brett Veach, 7 years ago today, was named the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs. And at the time, I was a little skeptical of this because the Chiefs had just fired John Dorsey right before this. And if you guys recall, at the time was a little weird because John Dorsey released Jeremy Maclin. Andy Reid was asked about it after one of the OTAs, and he did not have a very kind response to that. You could just tell, he had a pretty stern tone when answering how Jeremy Maclin was surprisingly released, and you could tell he was not very happy about that news. And shortly after that, John Dorsey got fired. It later came out that he released Jeremy Maclin by voicemail. So very weird situation at the time. And like I said, I was kind of skeptical at the time what they were going to do next, because if you guys recall at the time, what year was it? 2017. In the span of 10 years, the Chiefs had fired 3 general managers. They let go of Carl Peterson, they let go of Scott Pioli, and then John Dorsey. Um, so I was really skeptical. Like, you're going to hire your fourth general manager. You're going to have 4 different general managers in 10 years. That's not good. And usually when a team goes through 4 GMs in the span of 1 decade, that means they're terrible and they've been bad every year. Not necessarily the case with the Chiefs. With Scott Pioli, there was 1 good season at least. Then with John Dorsey, you started to see much improvement with the Chiefs. They were a far more competitive football team, yet to be below 500 in this Andy Reid era of football. So when they hired Brett Veach, I was a little uncertain about it. And look, Brett Veach had a very difficult task taking on this Chiefs job, because one of the reasons why John Dorsey was fired is because he waited way too long to pay football players. 2 big examples of that were Justin Houston and Eric Berry. Justin Houston got those 22 sacks, and Dorsey could have signed him before that, but Houston got those 22 sacks, and Dorsey pretty much had to respect his wishes and give him what he wanted if he wanted to keep him here in Kansas City. So he did that. Eric Berry in 2016 had a phenomenal season. And John Dorsey could have easily signed him before that, but he didn't. And after that 2016 season, Berry got his contract. Unfortunately, after Berry and Houston got their deals, that's when they both started dealing with injuries. And that is when you saw, less of those guys, and eventually the end of their time in Kansas City. So, and listen, some might say that's unfair to criticize a general manager that way. Maybe, but that's just the way things work, man. Like, if you're going to pay guys and they eventually get hurt, that can be held against you, fair or not. That's just kind of the way things go. But for Brett Veach, this guy came in, dug the Chiefs out of their salary cap hellhole. And if you guys recall, at one point, the Chiefs had $177 of cap space at one point. You guys remember that? $177 of cap space at one point. And Brett Veach got the Chiefs out of that predicament and found a way to give the Chiefs a much better spending situation. Now, obviously, the salary cap has gotten higher and higher each year. This past year had a significant jump, and might happen again in the upcoming season. We'll see. But Brett Veach has done a tremendous job. Under Brett Veach, the Chiefs have the most Super Bowl wins with 4, the most conference title wins. Super Bowl wins with 3, conference title wins with 4, regular season wins with 85, postseason wins with 15, 7 division titles, 5 conference title games hosted. Obviously, all of them were consecutively. And they've appeared in 6 conference title games. They've also scored the most points, 3,251 points since 2017, ever since Brett Veach has been the general manager of the team. So obviously he's bringing the right guys here to Kansas City. And by the way, all those stats I read, regular season wins, postseason wins, Super Bowl wins, whoever is second place on that list is not even close to Kansas City. I mean, the Chiefs, there is a big gap between the Chiefs and whoever is second on some of these lists. So the Chiefs, not only have they been atop the NFL, they've been great. Nobody competes with the Chiefs. Yeah, the Chiefs have had a few shitty moments here and there. Obviously, a couple of losses to Tom Brady in the postseason, the loss to the Bengals. But in general, this Chiefs football team just continues to thrive in just about every aspect, and they're getting better and better. This past year, obviously not a great year for the offense, but they've brought in a lot of pieces and no one's pushing back on the Chiefs offense. People are laying off. They're like, yeah, we know this Chiefs offense is going to be good this year. Nobody is criticizing this Chiefs offense. Nobody thinks this Chiefs offense is going to look anything like last year. So people know that this Chiefs offense is going to revert back to the old Chiefs offense we know, at least as Chiefs fans, we know and love, and some Chiefs fans or non-Chiefs fans know and hate for understandable reasons. So this is a general manager that has always put this team in position to win. Now, beyond those stats I just read, he gave a big 10-year contract to Patrick Mahomes, keeping him here in Kansas City for a long time. Did that in the 2020 offseason. He extended Travis Kelce during the 2020 training camp, and then just recently made him the highest paid player at his position right now. He re-signed Chris Jones in 2020, right before training camp, and just this past offseason, or the current offseason, I should say, re-signed him again, making him the highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history. So he's always done everything possible to not just keep the core three guys, Mahomes, Kelce, and Jones, but to keep them happy and keep them in Kansas City for a very long time. And I think maybe his best move to date was trading Tyreek Hill. Oh boy. Remember that narrative when Tyreek Hill got traded? Oh, the Chiefs are doomed. Mahomes will never be the same. Kelce will never be the same. He's going to get double and triple team now because the Chiefs have one less weapon to worry about. As if like Tyreek Hill was the gatekeeper for all things for a successful offense. You know, there is such thing as going out there and signing other good players. I mean, Tyreek Hill's amazing, and we're going to get into Tyreek Hill later because, like I said, he had some interesting things to say about the Chiefs. No, not about the Chiefs, but we'll get there. But in general, man, it's like this football team, you know, a lot of people thought the Chiefs were dead in the water when they traded Tyreek Hill. And when the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill, Veach made sure that the Chiefs got enough in return from the Miami Dolphins to field a championship-winning team. Literally a championship-winning team, because the Chiefs have won the Super Bowl both years without Tyreek Hill, and they're on the verge of possibly three-peating to do that without Tyreek Hill. And, you know, part of those draft picks, he had a home run draft in 2022, got guys like McDuffie, Karlaftis, Brian Cook, Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, who almost went undrafted. And the year before that, he had Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton, Trey Smith, all of them non-first round picks. Trey Smith was in the 6th round, if you can believe that. Obviously in like a mock redo draft for the 2021 draft, all of those guys are first round picks, 100%. Those guys are all first round picks. So he's just done everything possible. And by the way, I think one key move that does not get talked about with Brett Veach, getting Harrison Butker in 2017, that was one of his first big moves as a general manager. If you guys recall, Harrison Butker was a rookie on Carolina's practice squad. So Carolina thought, you know, good enough about him to keep him on the team, but not on the 53-man roster. So he was up for grabs, and Brett Veach snagged him. He replaced Cairo Santos, and in that game, he kicked the game-winning field goal. By the way, Butker, he didn't play the first 3 or 4 games because he was on the practice squad, and he led the NFL in scoring that year as a rookie. Made the most field goals of any kicker that year. And obviously he's only gone up for Butker. He now owns the NFL record for most field goals made in a career in Super Bowls, and also has the longest field goal made in Super Bowl history. So that's another home run move right there for Brett Veach. Find me another general manager or front office executive that is better than Brett Veach right now. You can't. You absolutely can't. There's no one right now better than Brett Veach. No one can hold a candle to him. No one. And like I said, this is a Hall of Fame resume. Like if Brett Veach, hopefully not anytime soon, but if he were to retire from football altogether today, this is a guy that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Oh, and another thing I failed to mention, Brett Veach is the guy who's credited for scouting Patrick Mahomes and bringing Patrick Mahomes' name to Andy Reid and convincing the front office, obviously John Dorsey was the GM at the time, convincing the team to draft Patrick Mahomes. He's the guy who gets credit for that. So all of those things, that is what Brett Veach has done in 7 years as the Chiefs general manager. Listen, the Chiefs have done a tremendous job keeping their core guys happy. And obviously this offseason, one big move that was made was extending the contracts of Andy Reid, Mark Donovan, the team president, and Brett Veach, keeping that entire core group, not just the players, but also the front office guys, the coaching staff. They re-signed Spags earlier this offseason, extending him, keeping him here in Kansas City. So, people keep talking about, oh, well, wait for Patrick Mahomes to be without Andy Reid, because the Tyreek Hill narrative, obviously, the Chiefs just took a big dump on that one. And now they're waiting for Andy Reid to leave so they can see Patrick fail. Well, you guys are going to be waiting for a long time on that one, a very long time. This entire organization from top to bottom, when you look at their team, is great. Now, I say top to bottom. I know they were graded poorly in so many areas, but as fans, we don't care too much about those things. We just care about the product on the field, ultimately. So that is good to see. 7 years, Brett Veach has been the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs. Hey, for those of you who've been tuning in late, appreciate you guys joining in to the podcast, the live stream on Facebook and on YouTube. Never too late, by the way, to join in to the podcast. It should be pinned, but I'm going to go ahead and comment with it again anyway. If you guys want to call into the podcast, please let me know. We only do call-ins after games, and I want to change it. I want to do it for every single podcast, every single Wednesday podcast and post-game show. So there's a link right there. I just commented on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you guys want to call in, if you guys feel so inclined, have a question, have a comment, you want to get something off your chest, click that link, just turn on your camera and your audio, and we'll chat it up like we always do. Patrick Mahomes, news came out earlier this afternoon. He won his 7th ESPY award. Yes, his 7th ESPY award. He's been in the he's played 7 seasons. He's actually played 6 seasons, but he's been in the NFL 7 years. The 8th season is going to be coming up this year. But in 7 seasons in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes has won 7 ESPY awards, and there's a possibility of him winning 2 more tomorrow. He is a nominee for Best Male Athlete and Best NFL Team. Obviously, that the second one's not an individual award, but still counts for him. 7 ESPY awards, man. And he won Best Male Athlete and Best NFL Player and was part of Best NFL Team last year. So the Chiefs, man, they're just running everything back-to-back Super Bowls, back-to-back ESPY wins. Like, they're just going. It's off the rails with this team. And I'll get to Receiver, the Netflix show Receiver, later on. Obviously, they highlighted the Chiefs. Like, they came out with Quarterback last year on Netflix, and that ended with the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. And this year with Receiver, because the 2 49ers players that they were following on the show, it ended with them featuring, again, the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. This is like the golden era of Chiefs football. Listen, maybe the Chiefs, once Mahomes leaves, Andy Reid leaves, Kelsey, Veach, all these guys leave, you'll see a bit of the Chiefs go down for a while and not be as great. And then they'll rise again one day. But, man, it's just not. There's no way in hell you can match this dynasty success. You just can't. It's just like the Patriots dynasty. Like, maybe the Patriots will be successful again one day down the road. They'll win the Super Bowl again, or maybe reach the Super Bowl at the very least. But it is not going to be remotely close to what it is right now. No way. It's just impossible to replicate. All right, let's get into Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was on a podcast called the Dive Bar Podcast. It's a Miami Dolphins podcast. And the host started off by asking Tyreek about the trade process, because if you guys recall, the day of the trade, it happened fast. Nobody had any idea that this was coming. When Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, all those insiders, when they first talked about it, it was pretty much done within an hour. That's how fast the wheels turned on that. And Tyreek Hill even mentioned in that interview how fast things went. Tyreek Hill did, and listen, I know Tyreek Hill's opened up a lot about leaving Kansas City and the reasons for all of that. I have not listened to every single interview he's done, but I know he had he said different things here and there. He did say that he spoke to Andy Reid before the trade, well before the trade, and that they had a discussion, and Andy Reid told him, "We'll get the deal done," hinting that Tyreek would stay in Kansas City. But somewhere down the line, they just could not come to terms on certain things, according to Tyreek on Shannon Sharp's podcast. Apparently they disagreed on guaranteed money, which I find very difficult, but that's what Tyreek's saying. The other side of it, like the Chiefs will never speak on this kind of thing. Like, they just want to move on, and obviously they have. Tyreek Hill clearly hasn't, and I'll explain why in a moment. But then Tyreek Hill realized that he could become the highest paid receiver in the NFL, and when the Chiefs were not willing to make him the highest paid NFL player, he and his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, found out that other teams are willing to give him what he wants, so they explored trade options. So Tyreek Hill, he even says this in the podcast, he wants to be the highest paid receiver in the NFL. It's a very important part of this discussion here, and I'll get to why. Because Tyreek Hill, says all of that, and then a few minutes later, when they're just talking about Tyreek Hill as a player overall in general, here's what he says, quote, "I want to win. I was born a winner. My whole entire life, I've been a winner. I hate losing. When we lost against the Chiefs in the playoffs, I wanted to fucking punch my fucking locker 100 times. Fuck that shit. I was pissed. I want to win. I don't care how much money you got. I want to win. Winning feels good." Let me repeat those last three sentences. I don't care how much money you got. I want to win. Winning feels good. You left the Chiefs because of money. Like, you just said that 5 minutes before, and the clowns who were on this podcast, there were three of them, by the way. I don't know who the host was, but none of them called Tyreek Hill out on saying, wait a minute, Tyreek, didn't you just say 5 minutes ago that you wanted to be the highest paid player, and now suddenly you don't care about money? You just want to win? Which is it? If you really, by the way, of course, Tyreek Hill does care about money. That is any athlete that says, oh, I'm not in this for the money, it's a load of bullshit, okay? Every athlete wants to get into this profession because you make a lot of money. Do they love the game? Yes, of course they do. But they all want to get paid. If you actually watch receiver, Justin Jefferson, who signed a monster contract, did a press conference. It was talking about, getting, being able to live a better life and being able to set up his family for generations, which is completely understandable. If I was an athlete, I would do the same thing. I would set myself up, my family up, and generations up as well. So nothing wrong with wanting to do it for the money. But you're going to go on a podcast and you're going to sit there and say, oh yeah, I don't do this for the money. But 5 minutes ago, I just told you I wanted to leave Kansas City because of money. And, oh, by the way, there are a lot of reports right now that Tyreek Hill, 2 years later, after being traded and being given a big deal from the Dolphins, already wants a new contract. And he was in a press conference talking about Justin Jefferson's new deal, which I just alluded to, and made some comment about how, being greedy doesn't win you game. Really? I suppose Tyreek Hill would know, of all people, because he left Kansas City for money, and the Chiefs have won the Super Bowl both years without him. And by the way, this is not Tyreek Hill's only time bringing up the Chiefs this offseason. I mean, he's been bringing them up a lot lately. He did a podcast. I don't know which podcast this was, but did a podcast complaining and saying that he felt disrespected because the Chiefs gave number 10 to Isaiah Pacheco. Shit, man, you should have just stayed. I think right before the playoff game, or maybe it was the Germany game, I can't remember, when the Chiefs and Dolphins played, Tyreek Hill was on RG3's podcast, and he said that he was jealous of the relationship between Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and how close they were. They would apparently go out to fancy restaurants, and Tyreek Hill only got invited to Joe's KC Barbecue, and he didn't like that, and he felt like a side chick. By the way, declining any barbecue in Kansas City is an option. certainly an option. Yeah, he regrets leaving the Chiefs. Okay. This is like, you don't need to have like a PhD in psychology for any of this shit. Okay. And listen, I'll just say this about Tyreek Hill. If you guys go back, and I know you guys know how to look these things up. If you guys go find my tweets the day Tyreek Hill got traded, I said, look, props to him. He wanted the money. He deserved it. Maybe he needed it. I definitely think he needs it now because of how many kids he has. And that's kind of my next point. Like, because of how many kids he has and how many different baby mamas he's got out there, he probably needs a lot of money. And like, if you don't win a Super Bowl ever again, but you have one under your belt and you just keep putting up these big numbers and you get big paydays and you never win a Super Bowl again, maybe never a playoff game ever again. I think he will, but shit, man, you probably need the money more so than another Super Bowl ring at this rate. But constantly bringing up Kansas City and admitting your frustration about losing to the Chiefs, it's like, dude, I think you're mad about leaving this organization, a winning organization. So, I'd probably feel the same way, but at the other side of it, you got what you wanted, which was a big contract. So it's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. It's kind of like Devontae Adams when he was on Max Crosby's podcast. Obviously, when Adams got traded to the Raiders, the enticing part was the money and getting to play with his college teammate Derek Carr. But that was a complete disaster from the get-go. And Devontae Adams on Max Crosby's podcast was saying, I don't regret anything, but, and then he goes on this long explanation. When you say you don't regret something and then you follow it with the word but and a bunch of other words after that, you regret the decision. Okay. And again, you don't need to have a PhD in psychology or anything like that. Okay. You just need some common sense. You just need some listening skills and you can tell. And by the way, you look at those two receivers, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. Both of them got traded the same offseason to get the money they wanted, but they're not getting the wins. I mean, Tyreek Hill, yeah, he's definitely putting up massive numbers, and the Dolphins are doing enough to make the playoffs, but are they winning playoff games? No. The Raiders aren't even above 500 with Devontae Adams. So, and listen, I'm not saying Adams and Tyreek Hill are not worthy of a championship. Absolutely, they are. If they were both available right now, Brett Veach should be trying to get them to Kansas City. Hypothetically speaking, every NFL team should. But I think it goes to show that if you're a wide receiver and you're going to demand big money, I think the Packers, and not that the Packers have had any kind of success whatsoever, but they won a playoff game without Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. The Chiefs are obviously successful, very successful without Tyreek Hill. So maybe a word to the wise, note to all the wide receivers out there, maybe be willing to take a little less money, because as important as you are to the team, it's the quarterback that ultimately makes the team. They've got the biggest part in the team's success. So maybe wide receivers out there can learn their lesson, especially with Tyreek Hill. This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. Get your tickets for sporting events, concerts, whatever it is you want to attend. SeatGeek has it. If you guys want to catch a Chiefs game, whether you live in the Kansas City area, you want to go to a local college game, KU, K-State, Missouri, one of those teams, or you want to catch a concert, maybe in your neck of the woods, the baseball playoffs are going on, go to SeatGeek.com. And if you're a first-time customer, use my promo code Farzine. You will get $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek.com using the promo code Farzine. Go to SeatGeek.com, use the promo code Farzine, and get yourself $20 off for your next event. That's $20 off using the promo code Farzine at checkout at SeatGeek.com. By the way, real quickly, Tyreek Hill came out with his top 5 quarterbacks. He was doing an Instagram live stream, and a fan asked for his top 5 QBs. In order, he said Patrick Mahomes, Tua, Lamar Jackson. This is where it gets interesting. Dak Prescott and Baker Mayfield. Okay, I get it was an on-the-spot question. But why do professional athletes have some of the worst takes on the sport that they play? Like, a lot of athletes don't like it when fans have opinions. They just don't want to hear it online from fans. But then they go out there and they give like the worst take ever. Mahomes, okay, obviously he's number 1, but Tua, I get. Like, those are your 2 guys, okay? Mahomes is number 1. He's everyone's number 1. I don't care who you are. You cannot deny that Mahomes is number 1. Tua, okay, that's his quarterback. He's got to put Tua there. After that, Lamar, okay. I mean, I know he's won 2 MVPs, but okay, all right. We've already gone over this many times. Dak Prescott, okay. Baker Mayfield over Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff. I don't know, man. I don't know, but you know, Tyreek Hill plays the sport. He knows a hell of a lot more than I do, I suppose. All right, let's continue on here. The governor of Missouri, Mike Parson, was in Kansas City, and he recently met with the one and only Frank White, who I know is not the most popular man in Kansas City. But nonetheless, the 2 of them met, and they met regarding the Chiefs and the Royals, the future of those 2 teams, what to do with them, what they think is going to happen. Parson, he said on Monday that he doesn't think the Chiefs want to leave Arrowhead Stadium for Kansas. But then he admitted that he hasn't spoken to anyone from the Hunt family. So how the hell do you know that the Chiefs do not want to leave Missouri for Kansas? How do you know this? The only way it's possible is if you've spoken to someone who has spoken directly to the Hunt family. And maybe he doesn't want to reveal that, and that's completely fine. But that's just a weird look. He says, I think, quote, I think they really want Arrowhead to stay. I think it's a unique arena. Okay, first of all, it's not an arena, it's a stadium. I mean, sure, it's a class, it's one of the classic arenas, but at the end of the day, what is Missouri's plan to keep the Chiefs? What are they trying to do? How serious are they about keeping those 2 teams? What are they trying to do? Because Kansas, even though Laura Kelly, she's also been kind of quiet about this in press conferences and interviews. At least the state of Kansas, they're still, they're out there making moves. And this, this situation does not look good for Missouri. I know I saw, what's his name? The mayor, Quentin Lucas. I saw he put out a tweet the day of the vote in the state of Kansas with the House and the Senate. He said that we're still in the first quarter. Okay. If this is the first quarter, you are down 35-0. And you better pray for like a Mahomes style comeback, like the one against the Texans in the playoffs. Because if not, they're gone. And it's going to be under your watch. Well, listen, Quentin Lucas is the one a few years ago who said the Chiefs will never leave Missouri. I don't know if he still believes that firmly. The whole campaign was a disaster. He actually commented on my post on Facebook, which I thought was interesting, where I mentioned, would the Chiefs maybe have done better if they were separate from the Royals? And he just responded and answered, yes. Really? Why do you believe that? Because the Chiefs' proposal was not very good either. It was not. It just wasn't. And I saw his live stream about 2 weeks before, I think. 2 weeks before the vote. And he did not, he was trying to answer questions. One big thing he did not know is whether there really was communication between the Royals and the businesses at the Crossroads. So he had no idea about any of that, yet he endorsed this a couple of days before. By the way, a lot of people are mentioning how part of the reason this failed is because he didn't endorse it until a couple of days before. I don't think that's really the issue. I didn't even know he waited that long to endorse it. I kind of just thought, it was obvious that he wanted this to happen. I didn't think he needed to like a formal endorsement. I don't think that played any role, but I just don't. I don't know what he's doing right now to keep these two teams. I'm not sure what he's doing. What is going to work here? I just don't see it. I said for a long time, I think they're going to stay. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I just don't. Real quickly, I wanted to touch on Netflix's Receiver. I did watch this this morning. Very good show. Definitely suggest it if you haven't seen it already. Not going to give anything away. Spoiler alert, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl at the end of it. That's a good story. Kind of like what I said last year about quarterback. You get to see a side of NFL players that you normally don't get to see. So I think that's a big part of it. Because I like to see some of that as well. I also like to see some of the interactions as well. That I think is, on the sidelines with the opposing teams, players, maybe the referee once in a while, those kinds of things. Think of like Hard Knocks, but with only specific individuals as the primary focus. The structure of the show is terrible, though. They did this last year and they did it again this year, and I did not like the structure of the show. Last year, what they did on the first episode, they showed Mahomes' first 5 games. But then in the second episode, they reverted back to week 2 to follow up on Marcus Mariota, which I did not. It didn't make sense at all. Why not just show everyone, in order, in line as it's all happening? Because you never know, if Mahomes makes a big play, you could maybe get Kirk Cousins. He has some kind of a reaction if he sees it on TV or his phone, and if the cameras happen to be there to catch it. So something like that, I think would be good. I did think this was a pretty good show in general. They got lucky with the NFC title game because they had 2 players on the 49ers side with Kittle and Samuel following them. And then they had Amon-Ra St. Brown on the other side for the Lions that they were following all season long. So obviously from a storytelling standpoint, they got pretty lucky with that right there. So that was pretty cool to see the perspective of both sides of that NFC title game. And by the way, that final episode was the NFC title game and the Super Bowl. So you get a lot with those, especially that NFC championship game. That's a really good episode. The episode where the Vikings play the Raiders in that boring ass 3-0 game. That actually, I got to give the producers credit for that one from a storytelling standpoint. They actually did a really good job with that one. And it kind of made it more interesting than the final score indicated. So I enjoyed watching that episode as well. And again, they had, players from both teams. They had Justin Jefferson and they had Devontae Adams. A little bit of a funny moment, and I'm not shaming this person whatsoever, but Claire Kittle, the wife of George Kittle, when McCole Hardman caught the game-winning touchdown, she obviously was not happy, and as any wife or girlfriend would. But she's basically moving out of her seat and leaving the row, trying to get out of there, and is saying that she's got to go and she doesn't want to watch this shit. Listen, if Brittany Mahomes said that, she would get lit up online. If Taylor Swift said that, she would get lit up online because there are a lot of Chiefs haters out there. The clip of Mahomes and Brittany Mahomes and Taylor Swift gasping in that Raiders Christmas game, Raiders fans love posting that screenshot. So, listen, what's wrong with doing the same thing here with Claire Kittle? It's funny. Like, I watched that for the first time and I actually chuckled when that happened. So again, not shaming her. Like I said, I think any wife would do the same thing. But it is still a little funny. I mean, come on, you got to have a sense of humor with these things. By the way, while we're on the topic of NFL wives and all of that, I know Brittany, she gets a lot of shit from people. I think in the past, Brittany cared way too much about the online criticism. I think she's done a much better job of that today. Maybe it's because she's busy as a mom of 2 kids. But man, you can tell she does not give a shit whatsoever about the criticism anymore. And props to her for that. But I gotta say this. Did you guys not see what Matthew Stafford's wife said on a podcast? Kelly Stafford's her name. She criticized the whole Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce thing earlier this year, saying that she doesn't want to see any of that. Okay. And then she goes on some podcast and reveals that she wanted to make Matthew Stafford, her boyfriend at the time in college, jealous. Obviously, now they're married, but wanted to make him jealous and would hook up with his teammate and roommate. And then a couple of days later, with all of the outrage that was out there, she posted a picture of that guy and his family and apologized to them. Okay, I mean, I don't know if she did like an apology for her husband, maybe privately, maybe definitely didn't do it publicly. But what made you think that was such a good idea to say on a podcast? Even like on a podcast that does not have many views, it just takes one person to see it, put it out there, and it'll eventually get seen by someone, and it'll get retweeted by a bunch of people. Listen, Kelly Stafford's a pretty prominent name when it comes to NFL wives and girlfriends out there. She's kind of been in the limelight for a long time, especially during her time in Detroit, which we don't need to get into because she got into it with Lions fans many times. But considering the following she has and how much she's been in the news, she should know, of all people, like, what you say is going to get clipped out. Kind of what Mahomes was saying about the Harrison Butker speech at Benedictine College. Mahomes made a comment saying that when you go out there and speak publicly, will things get taken out of context when people clip things off? Yeah. But that is the thing that you have to deal with when you do choose to speak publicly, whether it's at a graduation ceremony or at on someone's podcast, like Tyreek Hill's podcast. The podcast that Tyreek Hill went on was not a big podcast, but it became a big deal because of his comments on that episode. So the fact that she thought that was okay to say, would Brittany say that? Like, the people who bash Brittany, I don't think had the same energy for Kelly Stafford. But hey, people have selective outrage. That's just the way things work out there sometimes. Joe Burrow, speaking of podcasts, he was on the Pardon My Take podcast on Barstool Sports. He had a very interesting suggestion. I agree with some of it I strongly disagree with. He basically is saying that the NFL should go to 18 games and that there should be 2 bye weeks, suggesting one of those bye weeks to be around week 13 of the NFL for the entire league, and have Pro Bowl festivities during that week. Similar to what you see with the NBA All-Star weekend. The NHL does this as well. Major League Baseball does it as well, especially coming up with the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game. He believes that this would boost ratings for the Pro Bowl. And additionally, by adding a second bye week and an extra game, the Super Bowl would then fall on the Sunday before President's Day, giving a lot of people in the United States the day off after the biggest game of the year. I know there are some people in the media that don't care about that because they would have to work anyway. But I think, a lot of people, would get that day off. Okay, let me just say this. The 18 games thing, that's happening. We all know that's happening. The 2 bye weeks, I see his logic on that, but I can't get behind that. And here's why. Because you only have one team from each conference that gets a postseason bye. So when you give 2 bye weeks, I think it makes the postseason bye week a little less valuable. Because then, I mean, you can have, I think a lot of teams would love 2 bye weeks. It would certainly make the season a little longer. But I think, I don't think a lot of teams would be opposed to it. I just feel like 2 bye weeks may be a bit too much. And by the way, the whole Pro Bowl thing, I do not agree with one bit. Like, the Pro Bowl needs to go. I'm fine with them doing what they're doing now with the skills challenge and the flag football game. Before the week of the Super Bowl, they used to do it after the Super Bowl. So you would have a championship Sunday, AFC and NFC title games. The week after that, you would have nothing, no Pro Bowl, nothing. Then the Super Bowl, and then the Pro Bowl, which is kind of interesting because you would have some of the Super Bowl participants go to the Pro Bowl, which is kind of cool. Some of them would maybe enjoy that whole thing. But now that's not the way it works. The Pro Bowl does not conclude the season. It's the Super Bowl. What is the better move ultimately? The idea of doing it the day before President's Day, I actually love that idea, and I know that's tossed around for a long time. But man, this is the Pro Bowl thing. Just I don't know with it. 2 bye weeks, I don't know. But I will say this: do you know who loves that idea? Roger Goodell. You know what Roger Goodell going to do? He's going to try to put this rule in. Absolutely going to try to do this. And you know what he's going to do? There might be some players that push back on this, and he's going to say, he's going to point to Joe Burrow and say, hey, he said it. He's a prominent player in this league. We're going to go with it because one of the big ones said so. That is, like, Joe Burrow just did Roger Goodell a huge favor with this. When you have a prominent player that endorses this kind of thing that the NFL really, really wants, and we know the NFL is getting an 18th game, 100%. And by the way, somebody mentioned earlier, because the NFL has to pay like billions of dollars for that Sunday ticket lawsuit or whatever, apparently they're appealing it. You know how you make up for that money that you got to pay? At an 18th game. That's one way to do it. 100%. An easy way to do it. I mean, I think this might actually come to fruition. Now, I will say this: the Pro Bowl thing. Who's gonna go? I flag football, but you know, if it's around week 13, 14, you know, that's when the season starts to hit the players, and even like something route running, or you can pull a hammy on. Justin Jefferson, they were showing on the show Receiver against the Chiefs. He pulled a hammy just running a route against Trent McDuffie. McDuffie didn't really do anything, didn't push him or anything like that, or at least not aggressively. But he just pulled a hammy just from running a route. Now, there's never a good time for an injury anyway, but at least you don't want to have it happen during a Pro Bowl. So I could see a lot of players choosing to decline the Pro Bowl and would rather use that time to rest. Listen, man, the NFL season is truly not family friendly. It's just not. So I think in general, man, like if you do have 2 bye weeks, those NFL players will 100% take advantage of that to be with their family, not just, their immediate families, extended family members as well. And a lot of them love to go back to their alma mater and check out a college football game. So they're either going to spend a lot of that time with family or go back to their alma mater, their old stomping grounds, or both even. I mean, there's ways to make time for that when you're making a lot of money in the NFL and you got a whole week off. I don't think any NFL player whatsoever would have any interest in doing a Pro Bowl mid-season. It'd be a little different if it was like the NBA or the NHL or Major League Baseball, where okay, whoever wins gets home field advantage. But see, that's not the way football works. So I could see the NFL doing all of what was suggested except for the Pro Bowl. I could see that. Rochelle says with flag football in the Olympics now, let them play flag football. Oh, I suppose. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, Burrow actually mentioned he wanted to do that. Exactly. Boring. Says nobody cares about the Pro Bowl. I think people just care about who gets voted in. I mean, listen, I always laugh because everyone says they don't care about the Pro Bowl, but then when the Pro Bowl results come out, everyone's all up in arms. Oh, this player got snubbed. So I think everyone just cares about the voting. That's really it. But no, I do agree. Like it's very useless for offensive linemen because they don't have a center now, right? A center snaps the ball and they don't. That's all they do. They don't have to block anyone. It's not even like 11 on 11. It's 7 on 7 or something like that. Layla says they need to do away with Pro Bowl. Nobody cares. Listen, I don't want the Pro Bowl to go away. I think the players like it, especially that last paycheck before the offseason. Now, if they say, hey, no more Pro Bowl, we're done with this, then yeah, I think I certainly would not give a damn. Life would still be the same. I don't know. One thing I thought was weird was removing it from Hawaii because, and maybe I'm completely wrong on this. I actually thought the Pro Bowl was a big deal in Hawaii because that's the only NFL action they get. So they get to see the best players. Now, again, it's obviously the Pro Bowl, so players are not going at full speed, though we have seen some big hits here and there. I remember Sean Taylor big hit at one point. Johnson once lit up Jamal Charles when they changed up the Pro Bowl structure that year, if you guys remember that. But yeah, I mean, I would not be upset one bit if the Pro Bowl was to go away. Isaiah says, Tyreek Hill, hope you wish Mahomes is your QB right now instead of Tua. Real talk. Yeah. Especially when you put him over your current quarterback, for sure. Layla says Gary was awesome. Yeah, he was. And it's unfortunate what happened with his injury. Because he got the big deal and just wasn't the same. Michael says Tyreek just can't move on. It's funny because everyone here in KC has long moved on from him. You know what's funny is obviously a lot of Chiefs fans were sad when the trade happened, but a lot of people were mocking Chiefs fans saying, oh, Chiefs fans can't move on from Tyreek Hill. Where are those same people? Where's that energy today? Why are people talking about Tyreek Hill not moving on from the Chiefs? I mean, I mentioned earlier, like he mentioned that he wants to punch his locker 100 times. He said, he felt disrespected that they gave number 10 to somebody else, Isaiah Pacheco. He admitted that he was jealous of Patrick and Travis's relationship and that he did not get invited to things that when they were hanging out. Like, dude, you're just not letting it go. I mean, you're just not. So I don't know, man. And listen, I understand his perspective, but it's like, dude, you made a choice and you got to deal with it. You're not getting the rings, fine. You're at least getting the money, which I guess is not enough because he's already demanding a new deal, or at least that's what's rumored out there. So there's that. Another funny thing he said on the podcast was that he would always, in Madden, he would trade himself from the Chiefs to the Dolphins. So like, okay. All right. Why would you trade yourself to the Dolphins in Madden? Like, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, you're just saying that to kind of hype up the team that you're with now. It's almost like when Jamal Charles signed with the Broncos and he made that weird comment saying, I've always wanted to be Denver Bronco. Well, listen, I had an issue with a lot of Chiefs fans did. It's like, really? When you were, running for all of those yards against Denver, you really wanted to play for them? Like, come on. Rochelle says, when I seen they traded Tyreek Hill, I kind of lost my mind, but they have done very well without him. Yeah, I remember being at the beach in Mexico when I saw this notification, and I was like, what the hell? So I'm sitting by the beach scrolling frantic through Twitter because the wheels on that thing turned real fast. Tyreek was all about the money. He has to move on. Yeah, like, dude, you made a choice. Just live with it. It was either rings or money. Neither one of them is bad anyway. But that's the way things go sometimes. All right. That'll do it for this edition of the Chiefs Zone podcast. We are back. We're done with our hiatus. There will not be a Red Friday live stream this week because, let's be honest, there's not a lot of Chiefs news to get into. So we're gonna wait on the Red Friday live streams until training camp. So the week training camp starts, that is when we'll bring back the Red Friday live chats. So that'll continue to be on hiatus. Meanwhile, the Chiefs Zone is back. Forest Cast will be back very soon as well. So make sure you guys stick around for that. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please let your friends know. For all of you who listen, whether it was live on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, appreciate all of you guys taking the time to listen to the Chiefs Zone podcast. My name is Farzi Vasugian. I'm out. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Take care.